Former Patriots coach Bill Belichick is unarguably one of the greatest coaches of all time, and this might sound crazy, but I do not want him to be the next Chargers coach.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer, and we've been covering the Chargers together now for 8 seasons, but this is our 6th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you guys, as always, for making us your first listen, and to make sure you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel, and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Daniel, it has been a crazy coaching carousel with just some amazing coaches either getting fired or retiring, like Nick Saban in the college ranks. And then most recently, Bill Belichick and the Patriots parting ways. And honestly, I respect Bill Belichick for all his accomplishments, but I am not interested in him being the next head coach of the Chargers. For me, it's still Jim Harbaugh, number one, but I do have a number 2 option that I think some people will probably be a little surprised at. And then the latest thing that came out is Ryan Ficken had an interview request, but the Chargers went ahead and blocked that request. Ryan Ficken is staying with the Chargers.
Which is great news, right? Because, I mean, obviously from the outside looking in, we all wanted to keep him. You don't want to necessarily force him on a new coach, but I don't know how a new coach wouldn't at least consider keeping him, with him turning the Chargers into one of the best special teams units in the NFL. But we have a lot to get into. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. David, it feels crazy to me thinking that I don't want Bill Belichick, right? Like, just name value-wise, you're not going to find a bigger one. You're not going to have a name that big that ends up in a coaching search in any given year, right? And it feels like throughout the league, the interest has been kind of lukewarm, according to the reports. But for me, whatever it is, I don't want him. And it sounds crazy. And like, it also feels like the Chargers would be idiotic to not consider him, because he is one of the greatest coaches of all time. But when I think about what the success rate has been without Tom Brady, which has been terrible, right? How he's handled their young quarterback situation and the weapons they put around him, I just don't think I would want to sign up for the second oldest coach before he was fired in the league to take care of Justin Herbert in these super important years coming up.
I'm with you 100%. I mean, I have tremendous respect for what Bill Belichick has done in his coaching career. I mean, it is truly legendary. I mean, 333 and 178 record, including the playoffs. I mean, he's just simply one of the most successful head coaches in NFL history. But I don't like the way he puts staffs together, especially offensively. I think he doesn't really prioritize offense very much. He's very much a defense and special teams type of coach, which obviously those things are extremely important, and he could still put together one heck of a game plan. But I think that honestly, the offensive way the NFL is going, it has kind of changed, and I don't believe that Bill Belichick has changed or adjusted with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a good argument to say, hey, the NFL has passed him by. Like, the dictatorship type of a role at the top of an organization doesn't really exist. And I think one of the hardest things to do in all of football, and something that almost no one does correctly, is taking on full-blown general managership and also being the head coach. It can't be done almost, right?
Yeah.
Like, even Jim Harbaugh, yeah, you want to give him power, right? But if they're saying, hey, he's GM and head coach, that's a different story. And that's what Bill Belichick was in New England. And I think, as damning as the coaching part of it is, like, I still think the dude is an incredible coach. I still think he can coach. The problem is I don't think you get him, especially if you're getting into with other teams and it becomes, a race to Bill Belichick. Like, you're not getting him without giving up that ultimate power. And the problem is it's not even to me about like, okay, like, don't give him that much power if he was good with the power. The problem is I don't believe in the rosters that he's built. Like, I think you've seen since Tom Brady has left, the roster that he has absolutely crumbled, right? The other thing is like, he's 71 years old. Like, are we looking at a 2-year plan so he can get the most wins in NFL history and then it's out? I'm kind of looking for something a little bit more stable than that, especially when the potential backup or succession plan could be Josh McDaniels in a couple years. Like, I don't want to sign up for that, and I just don't think he's really ever been that great of a GM. I think he's a great defensive guy, a great defensive play caller, all of those things. But to me, I don't like the fit with the Chargers, and it focuses mainly around Justin Herbert because he's been awful at adding skill position players around Mac Jones. I mean, their leading receiver this year was Demario Douglas, who was a rookie. Second best receiver is Devontae Parker. It's incredibly frustrating to watch that. And I think you could say, okay, well, hey, he's had Mac Jones, he's had Bailey Zappi, but like Mac Jones wasn't that terrible as a rookie. And then he brought in Matt Patricia, and that's like one of the biggest red flags to me. And not only that, according to the Boston Herald, he wanted to bring Matt Patricia back in 2023 after seeing what a disaster it was. You also have, him hiring his son as part of the coaching staff too, a little nepotism here and there too. But like, I think the Chargers can do better than the Wes Welkers and the Julian Edelmans as number one receivers that Tom Brady obviously elevated to great heights. I think that when you look at the weapons he surrounded even Tom Brady with, right? Outside of Rob Gronkowski and like 1 year of Randy Moss.
Felt like he got lucky.
I mean, the thing is it felt like Tom Brady was absolutely maximizing.
Oh, definitely.
Right? Exactly what he had. And the other thing to me is like, it feels like Tom Brady really elevated at least the status of all the offensive coaches around him because all of them went out to fail. Like Bill O'Brien failed. Josh McDaniels failed. Charlie Weiss, go through the list. And I think a lot of that was because people were hiring the guy that's next to the guy, and the guy was Tom Brady, who's the greatest quarterback of all time. So I just don't think I'm ready to put Justin Herbert through a year of Matt Patricia as his offensive coordinator or whatever he thinks at this age, plus the roster and the offensive weapons that Bill Belichick wants to put around him.
You know what? Honestly, one of the funniest things that I've seen every single draft year for probably the last 6 or 7 years is the Patriots draft. Yeah. All of their drafts have been insane. They have overdrafted players. I remember, I think a year or 2 or 2 years ago, they drafted 2 tight ends in like the first 3 rounds that had like 6th and 7th round grades on them. Yeah. Nobody anywhere was having these guys anywhere close to where the Patriots drafted them. And like that, there's just head scratching. Well,
and then he went out and signed like Hunter Henry, and then also went and signed another guy, like the two biggest names in free agency.
Is it Johnny Smith or
It was Johnny Smith. It was Johnny Smith and Hunter Henry, but that was his plan, right? Like I'm just gonna go get 2 big tight ends, right, to help Mac Jones develop, kind of thing.
And that did not happen whatsoever. And I mean, also an article came out from the Athletics' Chad Graff, who basically said that he's stuck in his ways. He has his favorites, and he's very militant in nature. He gives out orders. He's not really a coach that likes to collaborate with players, that likes to, involve them in the process. It's more my way or the highway. And in this day's NFL, I just don't think that works that well anymore.
I think to an extent, because I do think there's pros of bringing him in, right? Like he has the pedigree to come in and hold players accountable and help change a culture that desperately needs it. That's the thing, is like I don't think Bill Belichick's a good coach, but you're also isn't a good coach, but it's just at this time. Like I do agree with hey, the NFL's not really run like that. The players don't really respond to that as well, and that's a whole different argument for a different time, right? But he is an excellent defensive coach that I believe could come in and fix the Chargers defense, and I think that would be a great help, right? I just don't know if that outweighs the impediment of what I think he would do stunting Justin Herbert's growth. And I think
that's the most important thing.
If there's an option to have him as just a coach and not a general manager, maybe. But I do think, he had a part in making Tom Brady the GOAT. Of course he did, right? Has a pedigree to hold players accountable, can change the culture, great defensive coach. I just think the Chargers can do better than probably a Bill Belichick that's past his prime.
I'm with you. I mean, obviously, Bill Belichick is one of the great game planners of our time and is a guy that is going to take what you do best away from you. He's going to take your number one player away. He's going to take your number one attack away, and he's going to make you try to beat him a different way. He is excellent at that, and we saw that every single time the Chargers and Patriots locked up against each other, and it was a very frustrating day. It never was a pleasant experience watching the Chargers and Patriots, ever.
Even this year, with their worst team, it was a 6-0
Even
game.
this year, it was 6-0. It's just really, really ugly because Bill Belichick is that good. He really does truly understand defenses. I just don't like him as the kind of totalitarian style leader that he was with the Patriots. It's just not going to work with the Chargers.
And the thing is, it's not like he's my last option or anything. I just
Right.
think the Chargers is just not the direction I would go. I would take Harbaugh, obviously, as
Same.
my number one and several guys before I would get down to Bill Belichick because
Yeah.
I do think it is a big risk. But if it's not Harbaugh, we do have our number two option. Me and David both decided on the same guy we would want. Is it Mike Vrabel? Is it Ben Johnson? Is it Dan Quinn or someone like that? We're going to get into all of that coming up right after this. First, I need to tell you guys about the Game Time app, though, because Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you're going to have. And just because the Charger season's over doesn't mean you can't stop going out and going to concerts and things like that. I know ever since COVID restrictions have really lightened up, I've had so much fun going back out again after it's taken away. It feels so much better, right? And the other thing is with the Game Time guarantee, you're always going to get the best price because if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Plus, you have basketball and hockey going on right now, baseball games I'm excited to go to in San Diego, best ballpark in America. Plus, it's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account, redeem the code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. I also need to tell you guys that this show has a lot of in-depth analysis and takes, but let me give you my hottest take of the day, which is the best lineup in LA right now is the lineup of auto loans at Logix. They start off at the top with my favorites, the proven and dependable new and used vehicle loans. You can count on those to give guys their lowest rates and save you big time bucks. Next up, they've got an exciting new rookie sensation in their electric vehicle loans with super low rates and flexible payment terms. Rounding out their lineup, they've got an auto refinancing loans and lease buyout loans. With these guys, you could lower your monthly payments and get on the road to owning your car faster. Look, I know it's a hot take, but seriously, no one can beat the lineup at Logix. Visit your local Logix branch right here in LA and the surrounding area and let one of their amazing team members help you out, or just apply online in minutes at logixbanking.com/car. That's LOGIXbanking.com/car. All right, David, well, we did want to incorporate some fan mail questions just because we had something come up and couldn't be here yesterday. So we do have your guys' questions, and thank you to everyone who hit us up at LockedOnLAC and also called in the voicemail line at 323-524-7924. We appreciate everyone. But we have a great question here because I know a lot of people are wondering kind of what we want out of this coaching search outside of Jim Harbaugh. So SSG Romano asks, if Harbaugh returns to Michigan, who is the number 2 target? Is it Mike Vrabel? Is it Ben Johnson? Is it Bill Belichick? Obviously, it's not Bill Belichick. David, who would you go with for your second option? Obviously, in the hypothetical that Jim Harbaugh returns to Michigan.
Right, exactly. That's a very important caveat because obviously Jim Harbaugh is numero uno for both of us.
Yeah.
The number 2 option for me goes to who I want to marry Justin Herbert with for the foreseeable future, and that to me is an offensive coach. And I think the best offensive coach that is available is Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson has been absolutely spectacular. Some of the numbers he's put up this year with the Lions, they scored 30 points 9 times this season, 5th in points per game, 3rd in yards per game, 3rd in touchdowns per game, 5th in yards per rush, and 5th in passing yards per game. So a very even approach on both the passing side and the running side has helped build a very physical and very high quality offensive line that has protected Jared Goff and allowed Jared Goff to look like a superstar.
Yeah.
A lot of that is Ben Johnson. And I don't know how you can't look at those performances that he's done, not only just 1 year, but for multiple years, and not want to see that paired up with Justin Herbert and his unique arm talent and his superior ability. I think that would be a great marriage. And you don't have to worry about playing the offensive coordinator carousel every single year, having to switch out coaches to have to try to learn new offenses.
Yeah.
It's just not a great thing. So you bring some continuity with the offensive play caller also being the head coach.
Yeah, with this, you know that Justin Herbert's going to be in the same offense, and you give him a chance to grow for like at least 3 seasons because Ben Johnson's the guy calling the plays. And listen, he's number 2 for me too. But for those of you that are just ruling out first-time head coaches, I understand it, right? Like I understand and seeing what the last 3 have done and knowing, hey, the Chargers need someone with experience. And I think in most cases, I totally agree with that, right? But like to me, with the way the NFL is going, and also the fact that like so few defensive coaches are really out there now. Like, that's just not where it's going. Like, the last Super Bowl team that had a defensive head coach that wasn't Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, his defensive coach, right, but has also the greatest quarterback of all time, was 2014 when Pete Carroll did it with the Seahawks, right? Like, that's the last time a defensive coach
10 years,
that
people.
didn't have Tom Brady throwing the football for them won the Super Bowl. Like, this is just the way it's going. If I have a chance to give Justin Herbert his Kyle Shanahan, his Sean McVay, his Mike McDaniel, right, that I feel I can fully optimize what this offense is, I think, yeah, you're playing to your strengths and you're getting someone that you have the best chance to maximize Justin Herbert with. Like, he is probably the best person in this entire cycle, John Harbaugh included, to get the most out of Justin Herbert. And I totally understand, like, Jim Harbaugh is an offensive guy. He can build a staff. I totally agree with that. And you get the best of both worlds with him, right? If I'm not going to get the best of both worlds, I'm going to lean offense, right? It's close between him and Vrabel for me because I like Vrabel a lot, and I feel like Vrabel gets the most out of his teams. And I think that's a huge accomplishment, and he did that a lot in Tennessee. But to me, if I have a chance to just say, okay, what does Justin Herbert look like in his ultimate form, I'm going to take that chance, and I'm going to take a chance of an offense I've watched a lot of and I know is a very, very good offense schematically, and see what Justin Herbert can do with that when he's not throwing into, tiny, tiny windows on every throw. Like, get him someone that can scheme people open. That is my biggest thing.
I want to see Super Saiyan Justin, and we haven't seen that yet.
It always feels like there's more. It always feels like we're just
Exactly.
seeing the tip of the iceberg. I don't think we'd feel that way if we saw Ben Johnson. Like, I just don't. And I totally understand those that want someone who has head coaching experience. I totally get it. I think it's a preference thing. For me, I'm going to lean offense if it's not Jim Harbaugh. That's just the way I would go. But we do have more great questions. This one comes from Edgar S., who asks, can you guys go into detail about the block the Chargers made against the Giants coach Ryan Ficken? Does the team now require to do something for the coach after this move, such as a pay raise? So there's nothing in the rules that says he has to get a pay raise, although they should give him a pay raise anyways. But David, I mean, I think the main thing here is just the Chargers showing you how important they think Ryan Ficken is and trying to keep him around no matter who the next head coach, general manager is if they can.
Absolutely. Basically, the rule is if another team is requesting one of your coordinators, offense, defense, or special teams, to interview for the same position on their football team, that team that they are currently employing has the right to block that interview request. That is exactly what the Chargers did. So unless Ryan Ficken was going for a head coaching opportunity, then
they can't stop you from moving up. They can only block lateral moves.
Exactly. But the Chargers know, thankfully, how great Ryan Ficken is. What he has done with this special teams unit in 2 years is, quite frankly, almost an aberration. Like, it's almost hard to put into words how bad the Chargers special teams unit was before he showed up. And he completely overhauled the entire unit. Like, this unit is like a perfect operation. Like, they very rarely ever get any penalties. They have fantastic punting. They have great punt returns. They have very good punt blocking, kick blocking. They don't allow big plays on special teams really at all. Like, it's been a true revelation to watch what Ryan Ficken has done with the Chargers special teams unit. And they know that they have something special in him and they have to keep him in the building.
Yeah, I think he's one of the best special teams coaches in the NFL, bar none. He should get a pay raise, help Darius Davis get a Players All-Pro award this year from his peers. And I'm glad the Chargers are going out of their way to keep him, right? You can't I mean, if you think about it, the Chargers also got blocked when Brandon Staley first took over from taking in Mike McDaniel as their offensive coordinator from the 49ers and Kevin O'Connell, two guys who are now head coaches. So you can block those lateral moves. If, and that's why it's like, hey, if they gave him the assistant head coach or some other title, you can get away with it like that. But for the most part, you can block those lateral moves. Let's get into this one real quick from Daniel Taralovo. Hi, guys. Love the show. I've been listening for a couple years from Denmark. My question is, with Corey Linsley properly heading for retirement, wouldn't it make sense to try to keep him as an O-line coach/assistant if health permits him to? And from what we hear, health will permit him to do that. Like, it's just football, which is an extremely unnatural kind of aggressively barbaric sport. You can't do that. He can do normal life things, at least according to him. What do you think about that, David?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if Corey wants to do it, he absolutely can do it. He was a very smart football player, excellent feel for the game. He really understood defenses and understood how to set protections. I think he'd be an amazing coach. Although, personally, I mean, Corey's got a beautiful family. He's got 4 kids that are very young. So I feel like he's probably going to want to spend time with his children. I mean, I don't know anything outside. That's just my personal feelings on the matter. If he wanted to do it, he absolutely could, and he'd be a great coach.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not as simple as that, right? Like, and I think there'll be some people out there like, okay, well, Corey Linsley was around and the Chargers offensive line was still pretty terrible, right? And that's true. But like, being around and being a coach is not the same thing. So like, I think you'd probably need some seasoning, right? Like, has never been in that official capacity. So I think you'd have to probably hire him on as like an offensive assistant, offensive line assistant, something like those things. Go to coaching camps, figure out how to teach, right? As opposed to do, which is different. But we all saw how much he elevated the play of those around him. I think he could be an incredible coach if he wants to do that. And I mean, even the fact that he's gotten the diagnosis that he has and he's still waiting to get another check in 6 months, even though he knows kind of how dire it is and how unlikely it is, shows you how much he loves the game, right? So wouldn't surprise me at all if at some point, plus, it's a lot of kids to feed. You got to keep the income coming, right? He's made a lot of money, but you got to keep it coming in. So I would love Corey Linsley to stick around in some capacity, and whatever that looks like, I'd be happy with it because he's obviously a cerebral dude. Great coaches, great players don't always make great coaches, right? But like, I feel like it's kind of like a catcher in baseball where it's like centers are kind of a different position where you see the game in a different light offensively and defensively to a certain extent. But we have more to get into, including a great voicemail wondering if Malik Nabers is there. Could the Chargers still consider trading back? What is the right move? That is a really tough one. We're going to get into that, and also how the Chargers can address Corey Linsley's center position now that he's gone, and maybe a reunion with former tight end Hunter Henry coming up right after this. First, though, I need to tell you guys that I know we come here to talk sports and escape from some of the crazy realities of real life, but can we talk for just a minute about preparing for real life? Because according to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right now in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade, and this is scary. I can't imagine a more helpless feeling than if someone in my family got sick while a supply chain issue kept them from life-saving medication they needed. Thankfully, we'll be okay because of Jace Medical. The Jace case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, sinusitis, skin infections, among others. This stuff could happen to any of us, so visit jacemedical.com and complete your physician encounter that will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed at a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular price. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. Go to jacemedical.com and use the offer code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. All right, David, we have more fan mail questions to get into on this Fan Mail Friday, as it turns out. And we appreciate everyone making your first listen. And you know what it is. It's Locked On. It's your team every day, even though we weren't here yesterday. But, pretty much every single day we're here, Monday through Friday. So make sure you guys continue rocking with us throughout the offseason, because not only will we have shows for breaking news like who the next head coach is going to be and all the big hires and things like that are to come, but also everything from here to free agency to the draft, to training camp. You will always catch us here 5 days a week. So thank you guys for checking out today's show. Let's get into these fan mail questions, David, because we do have actually a good voicemail here that I want to get to from Matt, who asked a very, very tough question about the draft.
What's up, guys? This is Matt. Not the season I was looking forward to last year, but I feel like this team has a lot of holes in the roster and on both sides. I feel like we have no choice to draft down to get more draft picks to help this roster. Do you think it's a good idea to trade down instead of grabbing a firepower wide receiver at the 5th overall pick? Let me know what you guys think. Thank you, guys. Bolts up, baby.
So to me, this is kind of Malik Nabers specific, just because he's the most likely, explosive wide receiver that's going to be there. And I think this is really, really tough, David, because I think you could be right in both instances. So where would you go with this?
Yeah, I mean, obviously right now, that the Chargers have a lot of holes. Yeah. But I really love the idea of pairing Justin Herbert with a really twitchy wide receiver that gets tons of separation. And I don't think we really have had the opportunity to see that quite yet. And who knows when the Chargers will ever be a top, picking in the top 5 picks again, if they get the right head coach and they get the right general manager. Sure. They may never have this opportunity again. So, and hey, a lot of things can happen. A lot of things will change between now and then. But as of right now, I'm leaning towards giving Justin Herbert that twitchy separator that we all kind of dreamt of.
Yeah, like I think, Keenan Allen, obviously one of the best separators in the league in his time for sure,
Right.
but it's just different with Malik Nabers as far as just the easy speed, the acceleration, the, explosive ability to house call anytime, right? Like he just has that. And I think that if you're the Chargers and you think that he's the next Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase or A.J. Brown or Tyreek Hill, obviously he's a different receiver than those guys, but if you have that chance to give Justin Herbert that pairing for the next 5 years while that player is at a really reasonable price considering what wide receivers are making nowadays, I think you have to do it. Like, I think you have to, because I don't know that, if you trade down and get an extra third round pick, like, or whatever it is, maybe you get an extra second round pick, right? Maybe you get a third and a fifth, maybe, and you can try to fill a couple more. Like, I don't think this team is one draft away from fixing it, right? Like, you're going to have to fill some holes with cheap veterans and things like that, no matter what, even with the draft picks. I like getting more draft picks. I think you really could be right on both sides of this, because I think it's a good argument. Hey, you have holes, try to fill them. But if you're passing up on a potential, not can't miss, but like one of the blue chip would have been the first receiver in the last probably 2 or 3 draft classes type of a player, like I think you have to take that guy and pair him with Justin Herbert and give him his version of all of those other guys and what those other wide receivers have been able to take those quarterbacks levels to, right? Because all those guys have taken their game to the next level in large part because of the elite receivers around
Absolutely.
them. So let's get to this next question here from Spence-I, who asks, if we don't get Bowers in round 1, can we bring Hunter Henry home? Feel like he would be cheap after low production years in New England. Probably not his fault. Instant chemistry back with Justin Herbert if he signed with us. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, I really liked Hunter Henry when the Chargers drafted him. I thought he was a more complete tight end, pretty smooth route runner, strong hands, pretty good blocker. Felt like he had a pretty good package, and he had some pretty productive years with the Chargers. But then he went to New England and signed a 3-year, $37 million deal, making $12.5 million per season. So, he's not 30 years old yet. So I just think it's hard to expect the Chargers, with all of their cap issues right now, to throw that much money at a tight end. Because, you may think that he will request or require less money, but we're probably still talking about $7 to $8 million per season, more than likely, if he does take a pay cut. Because, that's just, what I think it's going to be. But I don't think it's going to be the right time. I think that ship has kind of sailed. I don't think that pairing is meant to be a reunion.
So I think that one thing is you don't really know if there's any resentment over how things ended here before. Obviously, it's going to be a new general manager, right? So it's like, hey, if he's mad at Tom Telesco, that shouldn't fall him. I mean, he's still a passable run blocker, still has great hands, still a good receiving option, a solid option. And I do think the lack of production and also what the dried up tight end market has looked like over the last couple of years, like, I don't know what that contract's going to look like. If it's low enough and it makes sense, I'd be happy with it. I think you could do much worse as far as like a Band-Aid, assuming you don't get someone you feel really good about this year, right? Like Gerald Everett was a Band-Aid. Hunter Henry has a Band-Aid and a chance to recoup some of his value on a 1-year deal playing with Justin Herbert. I don't hate that. I never really felt like things clicked between him and Justin Herbert. I do think there will be some, familiarity there, and I think that helps. And like even with those seasons that he put up, or the season he had with Justin Herbert, still a very, very respectable, solid season. And I think he could probably put up something close to that even this year. So I like Hunter Henry. I'd be happy if the price came. I think could be unrealistic, depending on what the cap situation is, but I think they could do a lot worse for Band-Aids than him. Let's get to this last question here from Manny Ramirez. We talked about Corey Linsley retiring and potentially coaching, but he asked, are the Chargers going to draft a center or look for one in free agency? What do you think?
Yeah, I think this is a really easy one for me. They're going to look to address this one in the draft, and I think very high in the draft. I think if they have the chance at getting, Jackson Powers, who is, the consensus #1 center in the draft, I would love that pairing. But yeah, I think that's the ultimate way that they're going to go about addressing that position.
Yeah, there's only one Jackson Powers Johnson, though, right? And as we saw last year with the tight ends, like they still should have taken one, but we saw a lot of good tight ends go right before the Chargers draft, right? And it kind of happened like that all day. So you don't know how it's going to play out. You could look to free agency, but you don't have a lot of money to spend, right? Like Miami's Connor Williams is going to be a free agent. He's been a really good center for them. You won't be able to get in that tax bracket of being able to put a competitive offer together there, right? And I think you have to kind of go with one in the draft because you don't have a lot of options. I know Douglas Scott on Twitter asked me, hey, could Zion Johnson play center? sure, you could try it, right? Like, obviously, it hasn't worked out so far at guard, and I think there's still some potential there. But, like, yeah, but I think the problem is like, you can't go in with that being option A, right? Like, that has to be option B or C, something you can test out, and it just opens up another hole on the offensive line, right? Like, Jordan McFadden up and down 2 games for him. Like, it's not enough to sell you on him being the starter going forward. Yeah, I think you have to draft one. And if it's one of those other things where it's like, it feels like there's a lot of positions this team has to draft at the top of the draft. But that's going to wrap things up for today's show. Make sure you guys are back here with us on Monday because we're going over our GM wish list and doing the pros and cons of some of the biggest GMs that are on the market, as the Chargers still have not filled that void, and obviously might wait for someone like Jim Harbaugh's input on that, someone he could get along with. So we're going to go over some of the top options on Monday to make sure you don't miss it. Go follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcast from, and also you can find us every day on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel as well. Make sure you subscribe there. You can also find us on Twitter at Locked On LAC, on our Instagram at Locked On Chargers, and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. If you guys want to hit us up on the voicemail line, you can do that at 323-524-7924. A tier. I don't know if there's any Michigan first-round picks that work out for the Chargers. We will get in one of your questions soon, though. I appreciate you calling in. I love you. But that's going to wrap things up for today's show. Make sure you're getting here on Monday for our GM search as we go over our GM wish list and talk about some of the guys we like the most. But until then, guys, take it easy and go Bolts.